What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Unfiltered Truth. I am your host, Phil Robinson III. Today, I got a special guest. We have the deputy editor for the Raider Ramble, one Alex Monfreda, a gentleman that I picked up randomly off the side of the internet. He writes some articles. He's had a whole lot to say about Josh Jacobs. Hell, even Josh Jacobs retweeted one of his tweets. So without further ado, I bring to you Alex.
Hey, what's going on, Phil?
What's happening?
Thank you for having me, man.
No problem. Glad to have you. Glad to get on here and do this thing. Talk about Josh Jacobs, talk about the Raiders, and just what exactly the fuck has happened.
Yeah, man.
So the NFL deadline for extending franchise tag players has come and gone, and the Raiders managed to not secure an extension for Josh Jacobs.
Yeah, and that is that's a lengthy subject that we're going to dive into, but let me just start by saying that is a questionable move for a variety of reasons we will eventually be getting into. But yeah,
absolutely a questionable move. So let's dive into it, because obviously it's the news of the day. Training camp, or at least, the rookies report on Wednesday. The veterans don't report until the 25th next week. Football is almost here. We've made it through the off season. A lot has happened with the Ramble. A lot has happened with the Raiders. A lot has happened behind the scenes and in front of it. But all that doesn't matter, because we're about to get into the season, and so we'll start with Josh. I look at Josh Jacobs and what Josh Jacobs means to this franchise, and while you look at what he means to the franchise, you can't do that without also looking at what the running back position means to the NFL these days. And there's such a difference there and such a disconnect that it left the Raiders in a very precarious position, in which do you pay the absolute backbone of your franchise, the guy that is your homegrown talent, the talent that has been missing from this team for so long, because for the Raiders don't pay guys second contracts. I mean, it is what it is. And there have been a couple guys there. Actually, I was going to say the only guy who's gotten paid that I can remember from the first round has been Colton Miller.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right with that. Yeah, I think what was he, the first one to sign a rookie contract since Darren McFadden, a second contract after his rookie contract, first round pick since Darren McFadden, I believe. So yeah.
Mm-hmm. And so when you wonder why a team doesn't incur success and you're constantly looking to free agency, you have no further to look than that. I mean, if you can't re-sign your own guys, your own first round guys that actually become something, and you're no better than the Oakland A's, who are also looking to move to Vegas.
Yeah.
But we're going to get into this. So why don't you give me your thoughts on this whole thing? You've written many articles, lengthy ones, short ones, all in between. Tell us your thoughts on Josh Jacobs and not getting this deal done.
All right, so let me go back to what you were saying, because I think you're absolutely right. There's a great divide with running backs in the NFL, and it's not necessarily, a lot of people, there's a misconception here. They like to think that the great divide is that once the running back gets paid, they just start falling off. And that's why you don't want to pay running backs. But that's not really the case. The real case is that running back is so easily replaceable and interchangeable, and you can get productivity from almost anybody, that why would you pay one guy so much money when you can just have another guy come off the streets? And, he's not going to be as good as Jacobs, of course, but he'll probably be replaceable. And they'll just be viable, as we've seen so many times from McDaniel's offenses and with the Patriots over the years. And that's really the great divide right here. But with Jacobs, I do think he exceeds it. I really do. When you look at all the consistency that he's had, I mean, he's the only player, him and Nick Chubb, since 2019 when Jacobs came into the league. They're the only two players with 20-plus broken tackles every year. Since 2019 when he came into the league, him and Nick Chubb, the only two players with 50-plus, at least 50 forced missed tackles, which is broken tackles, but with a little elusiveness in there. And every year, even that 2021 year that fans like to talk about, where he only had 872 yards. Yeah, but he still had all those forced missed tackles creating for himself. So whose fault really is that? Is that the line's fault or is it his fault? Of course, it's the line's fault. And Jacobs really he's done as much as you can possibly ask out of a player to earn money from the running back position. There's no other way to put it.
There's truly not, especially when you look at what the year was that caused Christian McCaffrey to reset the running back market and make the $16 million per year highest yearly average out of all the running backs. Now, funny enough, in 2022, Christian McCaffrey was, I believe, the second highest valued running back in terms of what he produced versus what he was getting paid. Over the Cap had his 2022 season marked at worthy of $15.18 million. Josh Jacobs was 15.4. The next closest one was 13.6, which was actually King Henry. Yep. And so on and so forth. It begins to dive down and it begins to get smaller and smaller as you go along. Now the interesting deal is because Christian McCaffrey got this big, huge deal that was like, oh my God. But the reason why he got it was because he put up a Marshall Faulk-like season with almost 1,400 yards and 15 touchdowns on the ground, 116 reception season with over 1,000 yards and 4 more touchdowns receiving for a grand total of 23, 92, and 19 touchdowns as a running back.
Yeah, it's pretty insane. And that's something that a lot of Raider Nation critiques Jacobs on, is that he's not as proficient as you like to see in the passing game, but he has improved every single year. And it's not necessarily that he's not proficient in it, it's that he doesn't get the targets. And a lot of that is because he's no CMC in the passing game, but he's improving every year, and that's all you can really ask out of him.
Is it really the fact that he's no CMC, or is it more along the lines of the offense is trying to get the ball to other players? Because at Alabama, he wasn't a bell cow running back. He was more of the scat back that you see the Jalen Richards, the DeAndre Washingtons, your Amir Abdullahs, and Brandon Boldens who are coming in on third downs and taking those opportunities away from him and giving it to somebody else, or he's stuck in blocking because Derek Carr couldn't have enough protection on the line, whether it's max protect and then running back staying in. So you got 2 people running a route and then wonder why nobody's getting open. But Jacobs finished the year with 53 catches and 400 yards, which is nothing to sneer at. That's a good season catching the football for a running back coming out of the backfield with almost an 83% catch rating.
Yeah, absolutely. And the yardage you mentioned was a career high, and the reception was one off of tying his career high. So he's just getting better every year catching the football. And to your point, I don't think it's necessarily that he's improving his hands or anything, but just the Raiders, they're just giving him more opportunity, and he keeps showing like, hey, I can do this.
No, absolutely. Absolutely he does. So in the grand scheme of things, what do you pay a guy like that? He's coming off 1,653 yards, 12 rushing touchdowns, 340 touches on the ground, 393 touches altogether when you add the catches.
Yeah.
And you only want to franchise tag, and you want to franchise tag him because the franchise tag payout is only $10 million.
Yeah. Man, what would I pay him? See, this is a question. When we talk about paying players, a lot of the time we just think like, oh, I don't want to give him top. I don't want to reset the market. I don't want to make him the top paid player. I want to make him the highest paid player. But what we don't really think about is that number becomes irrelevant in a handful of years because salary cap keeps increasing. How much you pay your best players keeps increasing. And, we could talk about making Jacobs the highest paid today. In 2 or 3 years, that's probably not true. And he'll probably end up being the 3rd, 4th highest paid player if you make him the highest paid today. And with that being said, I would have no problem making him the highest paid because of that reason. It's not something to think about, man. And here's another thing about this situation too. A lot of fans are like, well, I don't want to make him the highest paid player, but if anybody deserves to be the highest paid running back in the league, it's Josh Jacobs. I mean, there's no other way around that. And I mean, he deserves it. In 2-3 years, that number is going to be irrelevant, or less relevant, I should say. I would have no problem making him the highest paid player in the year in the league. Sorry.
No, I wouldn't either. If you said that that's what you were going to do in terms of running back, look, he's a leader on the field. He's a leader off the field. First one in, hardest guy working, consistently producing, all pro. Yep. He's done nothing but improve almost each and every single year. He's only 20. He just turned 25, so he's young still. And going back to Alabama, he wasn't the guy at Alabama. So he's got fresher tread than what you would typically see for a guy hitting his second contract.
Yeah, and he split carries every single year before this past year. So yeah.
He did. The year that he didn't split carries is the year the line actually got it together and started blocking worth a damn. And he went out there and almost broke Marcus Allen's record.
Yeah, and he did that. When you talk about the line blocking worth a damn, that's mostly the tackles we're talking about. That's not even the inside. And Jacobs is supposed to be, he's touted as an inside runner. And he did all this, supposed to be an inside runner with an inside line that, quite frankly, did not play up to par. So, yeah.
No, and it's funny for everybody who's commented on the inside line, and for every bad thing anybody's ever had to say about Andre James, when Andre James went out with the concussion, the running game went to shit. And when he came back, it was night and day. And all of a sudden, Jacobs is out here doing this thing, becoming the all-pro that he is. And so it's hard. I get it. I get it in terms of from the front office. Okay, we got the line to a point now where they're solid, where they're middle of the pack before season, where last year they were absolute pits. We had one good guy, which was the left tackle, and then we had four guys who weren't shit collectively. And now they got a good line. They had nearing a top 10 line in pass protection. The run game is there. It's all clicking, but they didn't pay him. And so because they didn't pay him, you start looking at the backup situation. And God bless him. Said Zamir White is going to the same optometrist that Trent Richardson used to use, because that man can't see anything except for the back of a lineman. Hasn't seen a hole he'd want to hit yet. It's atrocious, honestly. Watching him run is like, you got all the athletic gifts in the world. Maybe somebody needs to get that man some contacts or something so he can see the hole and get through it.
Yeah, and I mentioned this in one of my pieces, but Zamir White, on the 11 losses that the Raiders had, in those 11 games, Zamir White averaged 0.67 yards per carry, less than 1 yard a carry in those 11 games collectively. It is unbelievable. It's almost like a made-up stat.
When I speaking of stats, when I went back and I looked at the fact that in 2 games, Zamir White had been outrushed by Jarrett Stidham. Same thing with Brandon Bolden in a full season.
Oh, that's tough.
Britton Brown didn't even make the cut. I got to ask, what are we doing here? We got a quarterback who may or may not be ready to answer the bell at the start of training camp, who may or may not be ready to answer the bell at the start of the season. One of the things that Josh said when this whole season kicked off was that, look, you want to tag me and get some help, tag me and get some help. But if you expect me to be the hero, you're going to have to pay me like the hero. And while $10 million is a vast improvement over the $3.79 he made in 2022, it's not quite hero money either.
No, it's not. And there's no security in that, like Josh said on Twitter today.
And security, it's funny that you say security, because security is a big part of contracts. And while everybody tends to focus on the dollar amount and the years, nobody really looks at what it means for the players. Now, Ziegler, when he does his contracts, is great at team-friendly deals and having plenty of outs built into the contract. And
Too
because
good.
he has so many outs built into the contract, players don't ever see the money that they're signing for.
Yeah, no, exactly. And Derek Carr, Darren Waller, gone before they even saw a penny of their extension. So you're absolutely right.
So how do you give him the franchise tag? You've done nothing but talk this man up and say about what he has done, what a beacon of hope, light, shining light, all that good stuff, up until the time it comes to talk money. And I made the reference about the A's earlier because the Raiders are making money hand over fist in Las Vegas.
Oh
I
yeah,
believe they have the most expensive ticket prices in the nation.
you're correct.
It doesn't make sense to me that we would be valuing money over production.
And you know that they're selling out those tickets too, because it's not just Raiders fans. You're a tourist. You're in Vegas. Why not catch a football game? They're selling all those tickets.
Destination site. You got the Super Bowl in Vegas this year.
Yep.
Destination site. And yet we continue to operate. You continue to hear it operating where we're cutting money as soon as we can. We don't want to pay this guy, or we paid this guy and we're getting rid of him, and da 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 da. And so I'll bring it to you. I'll take it a different direction because we've looked at some of this and we've talked about some of the running backs. We'll get to them, more of them as we go. But to make a little comparison for all the people who say that Josh Jacobs should be happy with his franchise tag and take what he can get, not ask for nothing. And if he wanted to reset the market, which he said he did not, then he can go take a hike, a walk, and all that other shit. So Davante Adams, and first let me say this now, and my words will get twisted up anyway, but I'll say it anyway. This is a comparison. I in no way am I shitting on Davante Adams because I love him. I'm happy he's here. I'm happy we traded for him, and I want him to stay. But Davante Adams had 100 catches for 1,516 yards, 14 touchdowns, led the league in touchdown receptions, had 3 rushing attempts for -1 yard. And in 2022, his contract was 12. He aside from the signing bonus, his salary base was $12.2 million. This year's salary base is 14.74. Once again, mind you, 1,500 yards, 14 touchdowns. Jacobs over 2,000 yards, 12 touchdowns, and he made 3.79 million in 2022, and with the franchise tag is going to make 10 million, 10.09 this season. Now, where it gets interesting is positional value, and these are over the cap stats, over to cap.com. You can go and look it up for yourself. Not you, but all the people watching. The over the cap has a valuation for the year, and for the year that Davante Adams had, his valuation was at $24.1 million for 1,515 yards, 14 touchdowns collectively. Josh Jacobs for the 2,053 yards and 12 touchdowns that he had, because he's a running back, his valuation was 15.4 million.
Yeah. To get into that a little more, I'm curious. I know that Josh led the entire running backs in that category. Did Devontae Adams lead the wide receivers?
No, not in yardage.
That's
And
no in evaluation, like how much he played for his evaluated money.
I'd have to go and look at wide receivers to justify that. I would say that if it wasn't him, he'd probably be right there with Justin Jefferson.
Yeah, I was just saying that because it could have been devaluating running backs even more if he wasn't the highest evaluated in pay. But yeah,
Right. So between Josh and Christian McCaffrey, that was your 1 and 2. I'm sure Devontae is up there 1 and 2 with Jefferson as well.
yeah, I'm sure too.
But you're talking about 2 less touchdowns and 543 yards, 530 something yards more. Math is a little off right now. But because
Yeah,
it's a running back versus a wide receiver, the wide receiver his year was better, was worth almost $11 million more, over $11 million more.
Yeah, that's pretty insane.
That's fucking nuts. Devontae Adams does not have the season that he had without Josh Jacobs.
No, absolutely, man, absolutely.
Whereas, could Josh Jacobs have had the year that he had without Devontae? It remains it could have been close because it's not predicated off the wide receiver and the passing game as much as it is the line blocking for him. Now,
Yeah, no,
does having a wide receiver that the defense has to account for with multiple people end up helping in the run game? Yes, it takes another man out of the box. So I'm not going to be as crass as to downplay it. But Devontae was doing nothing when Josh Jacobs was not getting off running the football. He didn't start producing and having big games until Josh was making his hay running the football week in and week out. And there should be enough money on this team for them both to be there. As you said, the salary cap goes up year after year after year. The only time it's gone down, I want to say in the last 20 years, was COVID.
Yeah.
And we could sit here and talk about how much sense it does or it doesn't make. But again, it comes back to, is the position, is that really where we're headed? It's at this point, it's reminiscent to me of when what was it? I'm having brain fart. The tight end from the Saints tried to become a wide receiver so that he could get paid properly for the stats that he was producing, Jimmy Graham.
Yeah. Yeah.
And they wouldn't let him do it so that they could continue to pay him. The NFL wouldn't let him do it so that they could continue to pay him less.
Yeah, no, it's definitely a situation, and with runbacks even more because it's much more extreme because with the tight end wide receiver thing, playing tight end doesn't cut your career like playing run back does. So
Right.
it's pretty insane when we're thinking about it from runbacks how much they are devalued.
And it's said, at what point how do you devalue 2,000 yards?
Yeah, I agree, and consistently at that. Like he's not the yards. If you look at the stat sheet, just the yards, he's not being consistent. But again, you look at how he's created these opportunities, and it is as consistent as anybody not named Nick Chubb in the entire NFL since he's been drafted, since day one in the NFL.
No, I mean, that's real. I mean, speaking of Nick Chubb, you go down the line. Nick Chubb had a season, I believe he's making 12.2. I want to say Chubb, Henry, and Jacobs are the only guys who were, and then Pollard and Barkley, obviously, were the only guys who outperformed their contract. That's 4 running backs in the entire league.
Yeah, it's pretty mind blowing. Yeah, and oh man, I think that their perception of outvaluing contracts is a little distorted, but regardless, it's insane. It just goes to show you how much people are devaluing it.
It really is. Now, obviously Tony Pollard, we heard early that he wasn't getting extended. Now, out of the 3 running backs, I would say that one made the most sense to me.
Oh yeah,
Because he's rehabbing from an injury. It was a one-time deal. Yes, he may have taken the position from a washed up Ezekiel Elliott, but at the same time, he's also 26, possibly
yeah,
going on 27.
yeah, absolutely. And no slight to Tony Pollard, who is a great player, but we're talking about Barkley, who's drafted top 3. Talking about Josh Jacobs, just led the NFL in rushing yards. I mean, it's not that Pollard's not a great player; it's that he's competing with the titans of what they mean to a team. So it's really unfair to Tony Pollard to compare him to the other 2. But yeah, absolutely, Tony Pollard makes the most sense out of these 3 for not getting extension.
And then Saquon, we have my buddy Jones, my co-host, and I have both said at length that if Josh Jacobs was going to get a deal done, it was going to be after Saquon Barkley signed. And I had thought for sure after the Giants had offered him somewhere in between 13, 14 million a year that was going to get wrapped up and that Jacobs would probably be sliding in there somewhere around the 14, $15 million mark, which would not have reset the market like he said he did not try to do, but would in fact have him notched in there comfortably right underneath C-Mac and up there at the top for based off the year that he had. Because honestly and truthfully, I still don't know how the Saints paid Alvin Kamara $75 million.
Yeah, that I agree. And also, I think a lot of this with Jacobs, the situation is that I really think it wasn't too much about the money. I really believe him when he says he wasn't trying to reset the market. I really think it was about security because Dave Ziegler, I mean, he's only been general manager for a year now, and he is already notorious for having these outs, not just having these outs, but exercising them. And that's scary, man. That's scary for Jacobs.
It's scary for anybody. I mean, what job do you go to where you sign a nice big lucrative deal, and you see your own pink slip right there saying, well, we said you could have this money next year, but you got to make it past this day to get there, and you're
Yeah.
already coming off a season where you almost set the franchise record, where you went out there and you led the league in rushing, and somehow we're still moving the goalpost back.
Yeah, and all of this, you touched on this a little before about how people complain, "Oh, why would you not take 10 million, ungrateful." It's not about that. It's not about the money. In reality, he's probably making more on the franchise tag because it's all guaranteed on the franchise tag than he would have if he signed a long-term deal for the first year, of course, as franchise tag is only 1 year. But
Mm-hmm.
it's about the security. Like that's really what it's about because as a player, you're a human, you're in this community now and you have a life now, you have a house most of the time. You don't want to give all that up, at the drop of a hat. So that's really what it's about for a lot of these players.
No, absolutely, or not even just the community, just flat out. I mean, I don't want to be making a whole bunch of money one day and then suddenly be in the unemployment line in 6 months. And,
Yeah.
and you've seen this happen multiple times, and you wonder why the running back market is the way that it is. And at this point, I could probably give you two names that would answer that question. One would be Le'Veon Bell, and the other one would be Ezekiel Elliott.
Yeah, man. And I want to touch on something about Le'Veon Bell that I've been seeing all day. And it's that, oh, well, Josh Jacobs should learn from Le'Veon Bell. But the thing that people aren't talking about is Le'Veon Bell actually would have earned more money had he just played on his franchise tenor and then he went with the Jets. It's true that the Steelers offered more money than the Jets, but the Jets offered more guaranteed money, and he would have had to hit on like all of his incentives to get paid more by signing the Steelers deal. Had Le'Veon Bell simply played on his franchise tenor and went to the Jets, he would have won by betting on himself. And people are saying Josh Jacobs shouldn't bet on himself because of Le'Veon Bell, but Le'Veon Bell would have won by betting on himself had he just played in his franchise tag. So it's not a good argument, and I just want to say that because I've been seeing that all day.
And not just that, but Le'Veon Bell was the poster child for how a holdout can go wrong.
Yeah.
Holding
Oh,
out
absolutely.
fucked up his career,
Absolutely.
effectively ended it. Went from being the best back in football, hell, with probably I believe he had the best rated hands in the league as well. I think his catching percentage was up there like 85, 86%. It was something bananas.
Mm.
And he went from that to being washed up, above, not good, not the player that he was. The situation was all different, and it just totally. I don't even think he got most of the money that he was supposed to get with the Jets because they released him after a year.
Yeah, he had a lot of time off from football because that's something a lot of people don't think about too. Is when you're not playing football, that actually affects you a lot, affects your body a lot. Look at Deshaun Watson. So a lot of instances.
No, for sure, and you see a lot of this. Big supporter, but he isn't Derrick Henry, and the numbers prove it. What did the numbers prove? Said Jacobs has been a Pro Bowler. Jacobs has been the AP on the AP list. He beat out Derrick Henry last year. He had the top yards from scrimmage in the entire league last year. It's not about what Henry has done in the past. It's what JJ did this year, this last season that just passed. Said,
Yeah,
unfortunately, the NFL, you get paid for your past production and not what you're going to do in the future. Otherwise, you'd be back in the situation where the rookies were making all the money and the veterans are the ones who aren't getting paid.
that's true. Yeah.
which is an interesting point to bring up, because the NFL Players Association is going to have to do something to balance this out, because all your running backs who come in and produced on rookie deals are now being held underwater by the rookie wage scale. And Jacobs was getting top dollar in terms of being a rookie because he was a first round draft pick with a 5th-year option. Now your guys who are coming in the third or later, who aren't getting all that money, who are producing, such as your Tony Pollards, and then getting to a point where it's time to get paid, and they'll see a franchise tag, and that's it.
Yeah. Man, a lot of this stuff doesn't make sense with the running backs, because another thing that people like to say is running back isn't an important position, but that is such crap. Running back is very much an important position. Now, who plays it? We kind of talked about this a little bit earlier. Yeah, I don't want to say it doesn't matter who plays it, but it matters less than other positions, we'll say. But the position that running back is and what it does to a team is very important.
Absolutely. Now, who plays it is absolutely important, because I'll say you take Barry Sanders off the Lions and you don't have a football team. Now you take Emmitt Smith off the Cowboys, and I'm pretty sure you could put just about any back back there, and they're going to end up with 1,000 yards. That's not to diminish his accomplishments. It's just that the Cowboys line of the 90s was just a cut above. And you take Josh Jacobs off this team. Oh, well, anybody can be a good running back on this team. Well, you look at what the backups did in his absence.
Yeah, no, absolutely, man. Absolutely. And when I say things like it matters less than other positions who plays running back, I am not catering that to the Raiders. I'm saying in general, for the Raiders specifically, it absolutely matters. As you're saying, we saw it with Jacobs, we saw it without Jacobs. To say it was night and day is an understatement. It was universes apart.
Absolutely. Said important. I'll give you this. So you could look at the numbers and the touches and let me ask you, who else did Tennessee have? Did they have Devontae Adams? Did they have their tight end Jonnu Smith? They had Bobby Trees, who played half the year. And that was it.
Yeah,
that was it.
Yeah,
Tannehill was awful.
Yeah, Westbrook Aquino wasn't good. They weren't. Traylon Burks, he wasn't that good. So yeah,
counting on rookies, and they think that D Hop is about to go out there and save him with no quarterback, and I got to tell you, it's not gonna work.
I honestly think it's a little bit off topic, but I honestly think DeAndre Hopkins is not the receiver that people think he is. Not now, not at this point in his career.
No. And the quarterback situation that they have in Tennessee is not going to bring him back.
Yeah,
in order for him to get back to being that guy, he was going to need a guy who was making full field reads, able to hit him when he was supposed to be hit, and release the ball instead of trying to make plays with his legs. I don't see that working for him in Tennessee. From what I heard, Malik Willis has been outperforming Will Levis. Shocker. And it's the quarterback situation is a mess. And more importantly, if you want to bring up King Henry, how many times did King Henry get leveled last year?
Yeah, and he's also the one guy who had more carries than Jacobs and couldn't produce like Jacobs. So, yeah.
It's hard to produce when everybody knows you're the only thing they got to worry about.
Yeah, no, for sure. And obviously that's no slight to Derrick Henry, who is very clearly a top 3 back, but it's just perspective.
And let's keep it a buck even further. Derrick Henry is a hell of a lot bigger than Josh Jacobs.
Oh my, yeah. Have you seen that guy run? He's basically a truck with legs.
And I swear, I still don't understand how it is, but when he hits open field, he just starts running faster. I'm like, he can't be. Whoa, I guess he was that fast.
Yeah, that's honestly my one critique with Jacobs, because Jacobs is not a flawless player, but he doesn't. The top end speed is, I mean, concerning is a strong word. It really is, but it's not as good as you'd like for somebody who you're going to pay a lot of money to. But I mean, he does everything else well above average, so it is what it is.
No, absolutely. So let's go down this 2022 valuation list. So we had Christian McCaffrey, who was at 15.1. Alvin Kamara, who was at 7.5, Derrick Henry, who was at 13.6, Chubb, who was at 13, Joe Mixon. I actually need to look at his contract to get his number, his restructured numbers versus his previous numbers with that whole fiasco he had going on in Cincinnati. He is coming in at 9.9 million. Aaron Jones is at 10.8, and then Pollard that was there. Pollard was 10.1 and Barkley was 10.8. And so it's those are your top backs who are all getting paid the most. And right off the bat, you see that just about all of these guys are all overpaid.
Yeah, that the Nick Chubb thing is actually interesting to me because I thought he had a really good season, but I mean, more of a testament to Jacobs because I thought he had a really good season, Nick Chubb, and Jacobs apparently they think he deserves much more money than Chubb, so really a testament.
Chubb is making 12.2 a year. He signed his deal for 36.6 million. Derrick Henry's making 12.5 at 50. Kamara is 75. I didn't get the years on his deal, but he was making 75 mil for averaging 15 a year. McCaffrey is on that funny money. He's getting paid huge amounts per year.
Yeah,
and has the highest average, but he's also the one that's steadily producing as long as he's on the football field and not hurt. Whereas Pollard got hurt at the end of the year and is nursing injuries, and Barkley has already had a knee tear and missed significant time and has only played 2 full seasons.
yeah, and another thing with Jacobs is fans like to say he's always hurt, he's always hurt. Well, first of all, it's football. Players are always hurt and they're always playing with injuries. Run backs much more, but he doesn't miss time is the big thing. He just does not miss time. And he's never missed more than 3 games in a season. This last season, he didn't miss a single game. He doesn't miss time.
No, he doesn't. No, he doesn't. And that's the knock on it. It's at a point now where we're trying to find things to knock a guy instead of being happy about what you're getting from him. You got an extra season. You got an extra game in the season. You played him in the preseason more than you played any of your other starters, which was disrespectful to begin with.
It's terrible. I mean, and when Josh McDaniels came into Las Vegas, man, the first thing he did was like, I did so much studying on Jacobs in 2019 draft with the Patriots. I'm so excited to coach this guy. And then it's almost like he sets up to trade him, which McDaniels denied. And maybe that was never the intention anyway. But I mean, it's just not a good look regardless.
It's really not. It's not. And to continue, I don't know how they do things in New England, but the New England Fun Bunch has done a great job of running out every Raider on the roster that they could find.
They're going to run out more with how this Jacobs business is shaping up, man.
Yeah, they are. They absolutely are, because I don't know, organizationally, that is such a bad precedent to set. I mean, I guess if you just simply expect guys to come in and do their job for as little as possible for the minimum wage of the NFL, I mean, yeah, I guess you could cycle through guys and that'll be what it is. You keep running your franchise like a college, and every 4 years you got a whole brand new roster. But
yeah,
you cannot continue to play with people's emotions, more importantly, play with people's money like this.
Yeah, no, and they like to do that defensively too, as you might have noticed. They like to do this with just trying to get these defensive guys for as little as possible and outperform their contracts. One slight problem with that, they don't have Bill Belichick, and I don't know if they've realized that yet, that they don't have Bill Belichick there to, bridge that gap where they can get away with that. But if they haven't, they need to realize that pretty quick, that they don't have Bill Belichick, so it's not going to work.
No, they don't. They don't have Bill Belichick. Josh McDaniels is not just coaching offense; he's coaching the whole team. and somewhere our talent evaluation is not at the level it needs to be in order to be jettisoning for all the players that you are, and bringing in the all your New England players because that's what you're used to, that's what the system fit is. Though they know how to run this, they know how we do things, and I get it. Every coach, every GM, every all of that stuff wants to bring in their guys, and we can't win until we get our guys. But those guys were winning before you got there. You were
Yeah,
supposed to take those guys and get those guys over the hump, and
yeah,
somehow they didn't.
yeah. I completely agree with you. I started talking about this. I don't know, you might have seen it, but my one big concern with Mark Davis is that he tries so hard in certain areas to be nothing like his father. Where with Al's, it was my way or the highway, and Mark is like, I'm nothing like my father. You know, like you're coming in, I'm hiring you for this to be your team and do whatever you want with it. And we've seen this happen where Reggie McKenzie comes in, he says it to Reggie McKenzie, and Reggie McKenzie wipes out everybody that wasn't his guys. And then John Gruden comes in, wipes out everybody that wasn't Gruden's guys. And then Dave Ziegler comes in, wipes out everybody that's not his guys. And there's constant turnover, and Mark Davis is not saying, like, hey, we have these foundational pillars, and we need you to keep these guys. Like, these are our guys. And because he's not doing this, Khalil Mack is gone because he wasn't John Gruden's guy. Well, that's not why he was gone necessarily, but that played a part in Gruden being so okay with him going. Darren Waller goes because he's not Dave Ziegler guy. And there needs to be some type of boundary set where it's like, hey, like, you are coming in and I want you to have the team in your vision. However, there are certain guys that are fundamental to the team, and I'd really like if you didn't get rid of them.
Well, that's the nice way to say it. I'll say one there's a huge difference in those names that you just mentioned between Reggie McKenzie, Josh McDaniels, John Gruden. Hell, you could even throw in Jack Del Rio, or even Dave Ziegler at that point. Reggie McKenzie was the executive of the year.
Yeah,
Reggie McKenzie came in, cleaned house, and put together a roster that got them to 12-4 and the playoffs. And had the Chiefs not had a great year, the Raiders not floundered at the end because of Derek Carr breaking his leg, they would have made a deep run. And I'd venture to say in the 2016 playoffs, if they'd have kept handing the ball off to Latavius Murray, they probably would have beat Houston anyway. But
yeah,
with that being said, you bring in coaches that are who want their own guys and want to get rid of what's been established and put into place already, and you're always at a point where you're continuing to start over. Most of Raider
yep,
Nation wants Josh McDaniels gone because he's a Patriot and he's killing the team. Listen, the Bronco fans were talking a gang of shit when we signed him, and I was just, it's the Bronco fans. Nobody listens to them. But yet I watched exactly what they said happen, in which he shows up, your top talent goes, you bring in guys, the wins don't come, and now you're in a situation where you got your best, absolute best offensive weapon is on a 1-year deal. Maybe he'll get franchised again, and he's most likely gone. Now, Vinny Bonsignor had said that they had a great starting point and this isn't the end of the road, and down the stretch they can have great conversations and negotiations. I'm calling bullshit. Said Josh McDaniels Josh Jacobs, it's funny with two guys named Josh,
mhm,
gave the Raiders every opportunity to come to the table and pay him.
yeah. No, absolutely. And it's like I wrote in my Josh Jacobs piece. You can't expect, because Josh loves being a Raider. When I talked to him at the Pro Bowl, I talked to him. I asked him a two-part question, and part of it was, if Aaron Rodgers comes, is that going to help persuade you to stay with the Raiders? And he kind of shrugged that off because he was like, I want to be with the Raiders regardless. And man, but like I wrote about, you can't expect this loyalty to last forever when you are showing absolutely none of it yourself. In fact, you're
No.
going beyond that and constantly disrespecting somebody. You cannot expect loyalty to keep having, and eventually that relationship's going to be tarnished, man. And there's nothing you can do about that.
and it's happening for no reason. There's
Yeah.
no
Oh,
reason. There's no reason why this deal shouldn't have been done. Did he want a lot? Yeah, yeah, he did. Said it, whether it was to reset the market or whether it was to come in just underneath the top guy. Did he want a lot? Yeah, but he's produced every single year.
yeah, man. And that's the thing. If he wanted to reset the market, which I don't think he did, he says he didn't want to. But if he did, who else is more deserving for it? So
Who? The rest of your first round draft picks of all, aside from Colton Miller, said then you'd go to Amari Cooper, then you'd go to Khalil Mack, and aside, and then past that, then what are you looking at? You want guys to be good that you can keep unless they outperform their contracts and want the money that should be paid to them because they had the production.
yeah, man.
It's a whole cake and eat it too situation that is like a dog chasing its fucking tail. Raider Nation is just happy with the chase, never the outcome.
Yeah, and we talk a lot about how does the locker room see this in terms of, but when we say that, we're talking about just in terms of how they view Jacobs not coming back. But there's a whole additional aspect to how the locker room would feel, being that the locker room is seeing that a player on the team can play this freaking well and it's still not enough. And that's
Nope.
who does that sit well with? Nobody.
And it shouldn't. It can't sit well with anybody because, like I said, it goes back to, well, if somehow we deem your position is just not it's just not what we're doing, we're not paying for it, you don't get paid. You can go out, be the best in the league, but we're just not going to pay you anyway. We'll give you this nice little comfortable team friendly woo wop and pay you this 10 million. And yeah, it's a hell of a raise from what you were get from the just under 4 million that you were getting.
Yeah.
It's 3 million over what your 5th-year option was going to be if we had decided to give it to you, because we thought that at the end of it last year we were getting rid of you anyway. And so the fact that we decided to keep you as a franchise tag and not give you the long-term contract because, well, you got hurt 2-3 years ago. You didn't, this was the first real season you stayed healthy the whole season. I've seen people get a hell of a lot of money for less.
Oh yeah. No, absolutely. And man, people were talking about it in the work chat today that a contract doesn't necessarily mean, if you give a guy a 4-year contract, it doesn't mean that they're going to be on the team for 4 years. You can get rid of
Nope.
them. And so if things happen to go that south, you don't have to honor the contract. That's, well, you don't have to honor the contract as in you don't have to keep them on your team for 4 years, I should say, had you
Mm-mm.
given them a 4-year contract, for example. So, I mean, the argument is always, what happens if things go south? What happens if things go south? Then you trade them. Like, it's not a big deal.
Uh, it, it's really not. And you eat some of or you cut them.
Yeah.
You get to a position where you can cut them, which is what Ziegler does, is set it up to where you go, every deal is year by year, which honestly is kind of what Reggie did. But instead of getting rid of his players, he kept them all. It was Gruden who got rid of all of Reggie's players. Now, that's the one major difference that I'll say about the Raiders general manager position, is that Reggie was probably the only person that kept guys.
And all right, this is actually very, very important. Something you just said before, you brought up a point about how Reggie McKenzie, executive of the year, and how he was building this team. And what happened with Reggie McKenzie retaining these players? I'll tell you what happened. Raiders struggled bringing free agents to Oakland for years and years. And then 2016, with Reggie McKenzie, players along the league are seeing what's happening in Oakland, and they're saying, "Oh, well, I might want to come here now." That was the year they got Sean Smith. Ultimately, didn't work out. They got Reggie Nelson. Ultimately, didn't work
Mhm.
out that much either. But these are two names they weren't supposed to get, and they got Rodney Hudson, who they weren't supposed to get. And he got this splash because players were saying, "Hey, like I might want to come here now." And then compare that to what's happening in Las Vegas with Ziegler. Who did they land this year in free agency? Because they tried to get a whole lot of guys. Who did they land? They landed Jacoby Myers, who came because he already knew he was coming here since he was with them in New England. So that is the effect that it has around the league.
Yeah, because for whatever reason, and the reason is becoming more and more apparent as we continue on, that the Patriot Way is not as well received as it should, as ownership seems to receive it. A lot of it is was predicated off Tom Brady and Bill Belichick.
Yeah.
And it's safe. I mean, we just got to call a spade a spade. You look at all of the coaches who've left New England and brought the Patriot Way to other places, and they've all failed miserably.
Yeah, man. And when this happens, when they don't pay a Jacobs, for example, people are like, yeah, well, business is business, which is true. Business is business. But what you're doing is other people outside of the Raiders are seeing this. People inside the Raiders are seeing this, and you're cutting off your supply. And from business perspective, that's what you're doing. You're cutting off your supply because people now don't want to come play for you. People on the team are hesitant to stay. And that is not good business, man. So business is business, but it's not good business.
No, it's not good. It's not good business. And the only way the way that they're doing it works is when you are winning.
Yeah, absolutely. Winning cures all. But, having the record for most 10 plus point leads at halftime blown in a single season is the exact opposite. So,
Well, there's some that's a conversation for a different topic, but it absolutely does not help. But the winning itself, you go from a playoff team to a 6-win team. You take your best guy, you don't extend them, and you try to apply the Khalil Mack theory. Oh well, we had him, and he set the league on. For we had the best receiver, the best running back, and we still didn't win more than 6 games. So what good did they really do? That's not his fault that you guys lost that many games.
no, exactly. And like I just said, they set the record for most 10 plus point leads at halftime blown in a single season. That is real. So what that ultimately means is they were not only competing in these games, they were winning by more than one possession. So there you go. That's the impact. And then you stop doing what you were doing and you stop adjusting. And then, of course, you end up losing. But I say all that to say that the impact was that they were winning. They were beating teams. Kansas City was one of those teams, by the way, that they had that big lead on and blew. So they're doing that against the best with these players. And then they're just not keeping it up. And then that's why they're losing games. But they were competing with everybody last season because of this.
Absolutely, and as you bring that up in the come from behind stats, because it's amazing that we want to replace what should have equated to about 75% of our red zone production, because it damn sure wasn't a quarterback throwing the ball into the end zone. When you were inside the 10, if your running back didn't score, you were kicking field goals.
Yeah, no, absolutely, man. And they were kicking a lot of field goals as is, and so why would you even want it to go down more? I think there's a lot of moving parts that fans don't think about. How fans think of it is there's a lot of money, and why would you give a player a lot of money? But I mean, that's the laziest argument you could think. I'm sorry, Raider Nation, but that is legitimately the laziest argument you could think of.
And on top of being a lazy argument, it's a stupid one. I'm like, for starters, why are you worried about money that you don't have to pay? I'm like, if they're going to give him 15, if they're going to give him 15 million, fuck it, give it to him. I'm not paying it.
I'm trying to be nice to people, but you're right. It is a stupid argument. I use the word lazy out of courtesy, but it is very stupid. Yes.
No, it's the unfiltered truth. You can say what you mean here. You can say that for somebody else. So Port Adelaide going hard on JJ. Listen, man, the rushing title is not overhyped. How do you overhype being the number one producer at your position in the league?
It's not overhyped because Josh Jacobs, of all players with at least 200 carries, he had 5th in yards per carry. That's something big to understand. In forced missed tackles, he had 90. The second most was 63. I'm almost positive it was 63. And yeah, I'm almost positive, but that's a 33% increase from the next highest guy. And that is insane production. It's not the yards. We got to understand the yards are why they are, because the yards are a benefactor of everything else that he was doing to create those yards.
Mm-hmm. And a lot of it was secondary yards, whether it be broken tackles or reading the play and making a cut and readjusting. Now, overpaying players costs the team long term. We've already established that he played well above his contract, so it's not that you're overpaying him; it's that you're paying him what he's worth. Now,
Yeah, but
the players that you'd be overpaying would be the ones who are not producing, which would have been your Brandon Boldens, your Amir Abdullahs, all your guys, your Chandler Jones, all your guys who are making large coin and not producing what they should be.
absolutely. And plus, when we're talking about Jacobs, we're probably talking about what's the highest running back paid right now? About 15 million annually, if I'm not mistaken. And
16.16, that's CMAC.
yeah, 16. So how much is that really towards the cap? It's nothing. It's all perspective. It's all respective to his position that we're talking about a lot of money too, because it's really not a lot of money. It's like if we made AJ Cole the highest paid punter, people would probably be like, "Oh my God, that's so much money," but it's not.
I
Maybe
believe
is
he
it a lot of
already
money for a
is.
punter?
Mhm.
Maybe, but it's not a lot of money overall allocated to the cap, is what I'm trying to say. If you give
Right.
Jacobs that much money, it's not a lot of money allocated towards the cap. It's just a lot of money for a running back, as people say, but not in general. It's not actually limiting team building at all.
I'd have to do the math on it, but if you really wanted to take that a step further and even go super technical with the money that they guaranteed Jimmy G and what they would pay Josh Jacobs if they did pay him top dollar, you still wouldn't be paying him as much as you were paying Derek Carr.
Yeah, and I don't know, man.
It's crazy.
Yeah, people just like to get the best deals as they can get, and I understand. I mean, that's if you can pay a player less, you're going to. But when you want the best talent, it's not how it works. It's just not the way life works.
No, and it really isn't. And if you have the best talent, you certainly have to pay them.
Yeah, absolutely, man. I mean, that's it's just such a bad look, man. It's just for so many reasons, it's such a bad look.
It really is. And so that that it's just it's frustrating because it's one of those things where you can see it from both sides, and from both sides it makes sense. And honestly, at this point, said if I was Josh, it probably would be better that he didn't get a long-term deal, because your quarterback situation is in flux. Is Jimmy going to be healthy? Is Jimmy going to start the year? Is he going to finish the year? Is he going to do play more than half the year? Because if something happens to Jimmy, you're now looking at Aiden O'Connell or Brian Hoyer or Chase Garbers, and none of those guys are playing a full season, and none of those guys are going to be able to compete in the AFC West.
Yeah, so just we started talking about this earlier. We actually spent kind of a lot of time on it, and that's how much money that how running backs are viewed by getting paid so little. Well, just for perspective here, Jimmy Garoppolo's contract, he is the lowest paid quarterback that's on a multi-year deal who's not on a rookie contract. He is the lowest paid in the entire league. And
Mm-hmm.
that is still about, if we make Jacobs the highest paid running back in the league, that's still 5 million more than what Jacobs would be paid, being the highest paid running back in the league. Jimmy
Mm-hmm.
Garoppolo, again, not expected to be the future. You know, I'm sure that if he ends up being the future for whatever reason, that's amazing. That's cool how that plays out. But he's obviously not expected to be. And still, being the lowest paid quarterback in the league on a multi-year deal, who is not a rookie, 5 million more than Jacobs if Jacobs ends up being the top paid back in the league. And that is ridiculous. I mean, that is just ridiculous. No other way to say it.
I wish that I had an explanation for him. I really, honest and truthfully do. I, but oh well, it is what it is.
It is.
It is what it is. Hopefully, Josh balls out again. And before he decides to leave, if he balls out, they put a deal in front of him that he actually feels he should sign, or go to Al Davis route and franchise tag him again and don't let him leave.
Well, you know, if Al was alive, that's certainly what he would do.
Al would have paid him.
Yeah, well, Al would have paid him.
He'd have
Absolutely.
got his money already. That'd have been a non-issue. He would have probably had his money in November.
this team would be a lot different if Al was the Derek Carr situation would have went infinitely different. Al would have had him sit on the bench for the rest of his career before he
He
cut him for
would have
nothing.
been gone in 2017.
I mean, that's probably true, but he wouldn't have been cut. That's for sure. He would have been traded.
Well, Al wouldn't have gave him no trade clause for
Yeah,
Scott.
no, absolutely, absolutely.
That never would have happened. That
Yeah, Al
never
was
would have happened.
Al was different. Certainly not without his flaws, let me say, but he was a different kind of guy.
Well, he built winners.
Oh,
They would
absolutely, man.
say what you want about the end of his days when he wasn't in full control of his faculties, but when he was on his shit, Al was sharp. There wasn't anyone sharper.
I mean, even at the end of the time, I know we're getting a little off topic here, but even at the end of his time, man, he was the whole Jacoby Ford, Darius Hayward Bay thing. He saw this coming before anybody, where he wanted a guy like Tyreek Hill or like Henry Ruggs that would just
Mm-hmm.
absolutely dominate the league. And it didn't work out, but he was ahead of his time in that thinking.
That and the running quarterback, I can't help but notice that since the days of Al, the days of the African American quarterback in a Raider uniform have come to an end.
That they have. They lasted
Uh,
1 year without Al. 1 year.
1 year, and he was ahead of his time with that too.
Yeah, no, Terrell Pryor.
Mm-hmm.
I totally agree. I actually think that they gave up on him way too early. I really do, but considering that he was replaced by Carr and Carr gave Raiders some good years before last
Hell,
couple, not mad.
I would even go as far as to say Jason Campbell, because the way
Yeah,
Jason Campbell lost his job was just like I almost gave up. It's like, what are we even trying to win here anymore? This man had the Raiders absolutely rolling. He breaks his
yeah, man.
collarbone, and now he's out of a job, off the team.
Yeah, that there's definitely been some craziness going on with that for sure. Campbell was with Al though, so I don't count him, but I don't count him in the specific conversation. But yeah, absolutely, you're right. You're on the money.
Yeah. Well, Alex, it's been a blast. We've gone an hour. I've been sitting out here roasting in this garage. I'm surprised nobody can see me sweating, which is probably a good thing because I'm doing it. So tell the good people where they can find you and what you've done and what you have coming up.
Yeah, so you can find me on Twitter, Alex Monfreda, Alex Monfreda, deputy editor, Raider Ramble, and do a lot of things with the Raider Ramble. I do a lot of reporting. I went to the Pro Bowl for the Raider Ramble. I went to Combine, got a lot of good interviews. Check me out because always when I go to events, I make sure to get a lot of good interviews. And yeah, man, that's it. And for what I got coming up, I mean, man, hit follow on Twitter and you'll see.
Follow Alex Monfreda on Twitter so you can see everything that he's coming up and you can see all the fine work that he does and picking up my articles when I fall down flat.
I wouldn't say
But
that, man, but I appreciate that.
oh, it is what it is. I give credit where it's due. I'm not one of those who be like, man, this guy's fucking up my shit. Man, I can't wait to get rid of this guy. Matter of fact, I'm going to do it right now. But anyway, so we have reached the end of our broadcast. Thank you for joining us. As always, please like and subscribe. Tell a friend. We'll bring back Alex because I'd hate to leave. Oh, look, see, he was trying to leave. Hey, the cats done got him, stole his camera. His microphone's unplugged. We caught him slipping. Alex, it's been a pleasure, bud. Thank you. That's a real sexy elbow. We'll do a move.
Bro, I didn't know I was coming back, dude. I'm so sorry. I had no idea you were bringing me
We
back.
caught him slipping.
No, you did, man.
Slipping.
You
It's
did
all
catch me
good,
slipping.
man. It's been fun. Thank you. We'll have to do this again in the season.
Absolutely, man. I really appreciate you having me on.
No problem. So I'm Phil Robinson. That's Alex Monfreda for my partner, Phil Jones, who's not here with us right now. This is the Unfiltered Truth, and we are out of here. We will catch you next time.